Welcome to Truth Talks. This is a podcast that looks at biblical truth from the heart of a pastor seeking to make application to every area and every part of our life. All truth is God's truth. And as a pastor, my desire is to learn the truth of God's Word and then share it with other people. Only when the Bible becomes alive in a person's heart will it change that person. Knowing truth is a great start, but obeying truth is really the goal. The Bible says in Proverbs chapter number 1 and verse 5, a wise man will hear and will increase learning, and a man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsels. And we thank you for joining us for Truth Talks. Well, as we continue on with our interview, we've kind of emphasized so far, and what we've looked at in the past, the idea of grief, sorrow, suffering, and really loss. And some of it's natural.
Sure. Yeah.
Some of it is because of our faith.
Yeah, exactly.
Death is a natural process that we're all going to deal with.
Right.
Some of it is what we would call being expected.
Exactly.
And some of it is what I would, we use the word tragedy. I don't know if that's the right word, and you can debate that.
Yeah, exactly. You can.
Somebody's smarter or deeper theologian than I can. But one of the things that I had you share with our men last night is just kind of the thought that you don't really know when you're going to expect this. Now, I know when we do these podcasts, they tell you not to date them by time of year and all that type of stuff. Yeah. But when we're recording this, it's the end of basketball season.
Sure,
and my daughter, she's not in high school anymore, but we lived through this of like a senior in high school. Their parents are putting up all these little pictures when they first start playing, like tonight could be their last game. And then, and then there's almost an expected end. Yeah. So like if it's not Tuesday night, it could be Friday night. Like everybody knows their senior kid.
Right.
And it may culminate in a state championship. Yeah, but sometime in the next week or two,
the last game.
This is the last game. And so there's a preparation mentally, emotionally, even physically. Maybe they buy some special presents and all those type of things. So we talked a little bit last night. I had you do a men's meeting, and I really want to kind of go to this thought.
Sure.
So we've talked about grief and living through this.
Yes.
So now almost we're going to turn the page and about like right now you may, for the people who may not be living through grief.
Yeah, sure.
About not really taking things for granted.
Yeah, exactly.
You use the verse in Proverbs. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about the verse in Proverbs, whosoever findeth a wife.
Findeth a good thing.
Right.
So we simply just talked about the good things and what we should do while we have the good things, because God does all of that. And, I simply talked about really what you said, not taking the good things for granted, because we never know. In a basketball tournament, we have an idea, but in life, we really don't. I thought, and I mentioned this example because this has been the hardest one for me, and I didn't think it would be. As an evangelist, we get to travel a lot of places, that kind of thing. We've seen different parts of the country, different parts of the world, and that's wonderful. But my wife, Rachel, her favorite thing was when we get home the next day or that afternoon, we'd go to town. She'd go to her favorite stores and just take a few minutes and go to our favorite restaurant in town, in our little town. Right. And she loved that. So the hardest thing for me now is going to town in our hometown and just going to those same stores and going to those same restaurants, because I really believe I took that for granted. Right. I really believe that was something so small, and I'm thinking, well, man, we just got back from Hawaii, or we just got back from Germany, or whatever. I'm thinking, why do you want to go to this store? But that was one of her favorite things, and I took that for granted. And I think that's the biggest mistake, at least I made. So that hurts now. But I want to do that now. I want to go there because I got good memories.
Good memories, right?
It started in your grief, and you all know this. You've all been through grief somehow. But you know this, in your grief, the first few months, I think of those memories, or somebody tell me something, man, I just cry. But now, man, I'm smiling, I'm laughing. But don't take the little things for granted, because I think that's the easiest thing to take for granted. And so be grateful. Be mindful of all those things, with whether it's a wife, husband, your child, whether maybe they are playing the last basketball tournament. Well, we'll take them to their favorite restaurant, because it won't happen again this way. And I think it's the little things. For me, it was anyway.
Right. Well, the little things, you don't realize you're building memories.
That's exactly
Sometimes, as a pastor, when you go to try to help somebody in the death of a loved one, and I've said this a lot of times, and I can't say it at every situation, But I can say it a lot of times. I can say, well, be glad you've got good memories.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Some families come to these situations,
Yes.
and
Yes.
there are no good memories. They're almost glad it's over.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
exactly.
you know, you talk about building little things. I saw a friend of mine's a missionary, and they raised their kids on the mission field, and they're having to be home right now. And one of their kids was at a ball game, and they were talking about, they used to put this picture up, and I read it, and their kid had lost the ball game. He said, for us, if growing up differently, we don't understand it, but we don't care about the ball game. It's seeing my child sit with my dad, their grandparent.
That's the way it
they
should
don't.
be.
It's
Yeah.
like, see, for everybody else, it's just a normal occurrence.
Exactly.
And I think the hard part sometimes is you don't realize that.
Yes, exactly.
And in the throes of life, I'm not an old man, but part of what I'm doing with the young couples and teenagers and young adults is I want to say to them, these are things I wish I had learned younger, that you're really building those memories.
Yes.
One of the bad things, and I said this to our men last night, like, for example, you know, if you're in a growing church and maybe the church service goes a little longer, or man, we wait around for baptism, or you know, I don't get to sit where I want to sit, or I got to park somewhere I don't want to park. We have to think about what we're saying.
Exactly. Those are all good things.
Yeah, or like you take your kids and be like, well, they've got a runny nose again. Well, but
sure they do. Yeah,
God's blessed you, and there's families that are struggling to have children, and
exactly.
we just don't sometimes realize that we're building those memories, and some days they'll be gone. And what I said at the end of your talk last night is, if we're not careful, not only do we not appreciate the good things, we often find ourselves complaining about them.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I can be honest. I can tell you, I promise you, I complained about taking her to town and going shopping. I promise you. And now, you know, I'd give anything just to go one more time. And I think we're all like that. But yeah, to me, it's just don't take the little things for granted. While you have the little things.
Now, I've got this list here. I know you didn't necessarily, but I wrote it down last night. Like you said, don't take the good things for granted.
Sure.
And don't assume the good things will always be there.
Exactly.
Take care of the good things.
Yes.
Stay close to the good things.
Exactly. Yes.
And love and cherish the good things.
Yes.
And enjoy the good things. And I wrote down underneath there, I think what you ended there was just everyday task.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it could be just another Friday night.
Sure.
It could be whether that's date night, not date night.
Right.
It just run, like you said, running the store together. You know, running an errand together.
Exactly.
And we sometimes miss it, and it's bad. Especially those of us sometimes that are in leadership, our mind is not always there.
Oh, that's exactly, you know,
I'm thinking about, I've got to do this, I got to do that, and instead of just really savoring that time.
Yes.
You know, as with our kids, as they get older, you realize that window's closing.
Exactly.
And when your kids are little, and everybody tells you this, and you think you're doing the best you can.
Listen.
No,
I don't listen.
You think these days go on forever.
Yes.
I remember Pastor Sexton.
Yeah.
I worked for him for 15 years, but I didn't understand the way he talked sometimes. I was a young man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And he would say things like, how many good years do I have left? That I've got good energy and I can do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, I mean, I'm in my 20s. Yeah, right. That thought never came across that mind. Yeah. And then now, you know, I'm 48 thinking,
how many good years I've left?
Can I pastor this church 20 years?
Right.
Well, maybe if my health holds out, can I go 15?
Sure,
like, you start thinking differently.
You do.
And the thing that I would say is, and you know, somebody says to me every now and then, they say, what happened, grandparents? We've got a little grandson, and they're like, what happened to that? My parents, they were like, so whatever. And now when they come into grandparents, they've lost their mind. What they really have is they realize how brief that time is.
Oh, that's exactly right. Yeah.
And so, as I say to you, you know, you think about the good things in life, you know, your favorite memories.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, but one of the things I would say to you, you said you traveled a lot with your family.
Sure. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And so one of the things, so now you find yourself like, well, I know Rachel would enjoy this. I'm getting to do this. I wish I could do that.
Yeah, right.
But what I want to say to you men, and really ladies in particular, is that's a hard attitude.
That is.
That doesn't necessarily begin in our grief.
Yeah.
That begins this. I used Brother Gordon as an example.
Right.
And Mrs. Gordon went to her funeral a few weeks ago, and I had the opportunity to know them for a long time. And the last couple of years, Miss Gordon had a lot of physical things and mental things that she dealt with that he would not. They wouldn't talk about, and I wouldn't say anything, but he cared for her.
He did.
And repeatedly, even at the funeral, so many people like, you've done everything you could for her, and you know, you cared for her physically, and, you know, even to the point of getting her ready and when she was able to go to church and those type of things. But what I knew, and not just me, but those that close to him knew this, that didn't start 2 or 3 years ago when she got a diagnosis.
Exactly.
That was a lifetime of little things. And so if you think about little things, you just, I guess, kind of as we come to a close, what would you say to somebody? Now, it's not, you know, your situation's husband-wife.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
But, you know, you've got a daughter.
But it can apply to anything.
You know, I mean, and like you said last night, she may not always travel with you.
Right, exactly.
You know, you've got parents that are aging.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And so what would you say about valuing? I mean, if you just kind of gave us a challenge of valuing the everyday things and little things, like, you know, what is your thought process sitting in your seat that we're not in?
Well, it's changed. I thought I was trying to do it before, because me and you have both been taught, trained, hey, your family and all these things, you put that for, you know, I thought I knew, but it really has changed because I found out the importance of those things. I hope it's made me a better father. Now, my daughter, she's not a teenager no more. She's a young lady. But the days I do have with her now, the times she can travel with, they mean a lot to me, because I know that will end. Right. As you said, my mother and father, my dad will be 83. My mom will be 81. You'd think she's 40. I mean, she's crazy as always. But I know that'll change. And then the little things. I will say this about friendships. I know me and you aren't together hardly ever, but in ministry, that's the way it goes. Right. Me and our friend Scott Pauley, I mean, I live 10 minutes from him. I never see him. You know, we're on the phone. But the time we have together, it means. So I will say this, not going back to grief, but let me mention this. Grief and sorrow and these things that happen, it will teach you and it will help you if I let it.
Right.
And it has really helped me to see, like, these things do matter. So I will say this to every parent, every grandparent. Your grandkids aren't always going to be little, you know, enjoy that, love that. And we know these things. This is not something I'm not saying. But I think we need to be more careful in realizing how important that is. Because I never dreamed Rachel would die as a 48-year-old woman. I mentioned that last night. That seemed crazy. That wasn't even in my mind. But God let her go to heaven then. And we did have a wonderful marriage. There's so much I wish we could have done, but we couldn't. So the days you have, the time you have, and as we started this, don't take it for granted, and enjoy it. And those times that you're too tired and you don't want to do it anyway, that kind of thing. You know, stuff we already know.
Right. You know, everybody has some regret.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
You try to live your life with as little regret as possible.
Yes.
And but you don't want that regret to be from a lack of effort.
Exactly.
You know, you think about your life and the opportunity you have, and you can't do everything.
Yeah, right,
Every day you're making choices.
Oh, sure.
You know, and that's always a pull. That's one of the hardest things about pastoring is you always feel like you could do more. There's somebody else you could have called, should have done. Yeah. And then you've got to try to balance your family in those type of things. And you don't want to be selfish.
Exactly.
And you want to give of yourself.
Sure.
But you want to give of yourself with the things that are the priority. And, you know, when you think about children, parents on both ends, the weird thing about being middle-aged, now, my parents are both gone to heaven and maybe a little earlier and than some situation. But the hard thing you balance about middle age is you've got both spectrums. You've got your kids that are growing up.
You do.
Then you've got your parents that are aging. Exactly. And you have responsibilities there. Exactly. And then you have the call of God on your life and responsibility. One thing I will say this, and I look, I'm all for working hard, and I think you ought to work hard, but I see a lot of men try to make money over valuing the moments with their kids.
Right.
And I've got friends that I know and love, and I want to say to you, you know, look, give it up. Yes. Work. Yeah, I'm not saying don't provide for your family.
No, exactly.
You know, so if you don't provide for your family, worse than an infidel. I get all that.
Right. Yeah, sure.
But the extra money won't give back the moments.
That's exactly right. You
The
can't
ball,
buy 'em.
the Saturday T-ball games,
Right,
the little soccer games, and you say, well, they're playing in the daisy, they're playing in the dirt. They're not that. All they do care is they just look up and see if you're there.
That's exactly right.
And that,
It's
and I know
important
you may not be able to make every one of them.
Sure, it's
but
important
don't
to 'em.
choose other things. Don't choose making extra money. Don't choose making this. And then you close that window. You come down that window as
Right.
With your children. It's
too late. Too
like
late.
I have adult children. You have adult
Yes,
children now.
yes.
And someone said this to you. Your role changes from the authority to really all you are is now the influencer.
Yeah, that's
And
a good
true.
way. That's a good way. Yeah.
And but I would say this to you. So if we kind of come this to close, like you're talking about valuing the good things, the relationship with the Lord, obviously, we're to value those moments, and nothing else should prioritize that.
Exactly.
The moments with our spouse, Pastor Sexton used to say this, and I heard him say it in a wedding ceremony. He said, the greatest thing that Jesus said to his bride is, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. Yeah. And then I've heard him say this, I don't know whether it's in that wedding, but he'd say, that means I never leave her mentally. And then he said, you don't have to worry about leaving her physically. Yeah. He's like, so if I would travel and preach, he used that as an example. He said, if I was, say, at the Grand Canyon or whatever, or the Niagara Falls, and even if I was by myself, I would be thinking, boy, my wife would enjoy this, or she would enjoy this store, this restaurant. Yeah. And you're carrying that with you. And then, you come to your children valuing those moments. Look, we've kind of belabored that point, and I don't have a lot of regrets. I'm thankful for the time I've had with my family. One thing that I would say to you men in particular, sometimes our family has us, yes, but they have a shell of us.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And, so mentally I'm exhausted.
Yes.
Emotionally I'm spent. I'm there, but I'm on edge.
Yeah, you're at the house, but
right.
you're not there.
Right. I'm a little bit like, leave me alone. And
exactly.
So, when you talk about valuing those things, we would all say our family is more important than our job.
Sure.
Well, then we need to make that
exactly
a priority. Right. Yeah. And one of the challenges, and I battle it myself. My wife works with me in the office, and we're here all the time. And if we're not careful, we're working whatever, and we're together, but we're not together in the best emotional, mental state. So if those are the important things, the good things,
yes, then
they deserve the best of us.
That's exactly right.
Not just the worst of us. Well, I'll do it, and I'm going to sit over here and complain about
the best attitude, the best mentality, all that kind of thing.
And then, of course, the Christian brethren. We talk about Christian brethren in the world and serving, but value the good things. I use that verse a lot. Every good gift cometh down from above. James chapter 1. And it's not just whosoever finds a wife finds a good thing. That is the Lord's plan for most people is to be married and to serve the Lord together. And from that comes children and family and in-laws and responsibilities.
Exactly.
And those are the good things.
They are.
And we've got to work hard to value them. Because unlike your senior season of basketball, you don't know when it's coming to an end.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
That's
the hard part.
That's the hard part. You don't. Some of us don't know when the last time you'll see your spouse. Right. Your spouse. Some of you don't know the last time you see your parents in good health, and you don't know. My parents. There's a time in life when my parents. Every phone call I got from a sibling, I thought, well, is there? Is this gone? This whatever. I got one the other day from Stephanie's brother, and it was on Sunday, and I'm like, it's 10 minutes before church.
Why is he calling?
I'm like, why is he calling? He's like, oh, I didn't mean to call you. And I'm like, well, I thought something was wrong with one of Stephanie's parents.
Sure. Yeah,
and you think that at this station
this time. Yeah.
So you want to take the extra trip. You want to go by and visit them, and you want to take the time with your family, and because you don't know. Now, I understand everything can go overboard. I'm not talking about but I am saying in our American culture.
No, that's exactly right.
That most of the time.
Yes.
Too many times we put too much emphasis on men. We don't want to, or on work. We don't want to let anybody down at the job, or we want to take on this extra thing or that extra thing. And we want to, those. I'm not saying don't do your job.
Sure.
I'm not saying lie, steal, and cheat. I'm not talking about that.
Yeah.
But value the things.
That's exactly right.
That really matter for time.
I found a lot of men. They have their job. They work hard for their family, and then they think, well, I got to have my time, and they'll put their hobbies over their family. Don't ever do that. I found. And I know it's okay to have hobbies. We all have things we like, but you just can't put that over your family.
No,
a lot of men do that.
A lot of men do that. And I say this in my premarital counseling, and guns, I don't mind you hunting and fishing.
Right.
But these guys, and I mean, you want to slap them. I mean, you want to slap them.
Yeah.
They'll go
What are you
buy.
thinking?
They'll go buy $1,000
Yes.
rifle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they've already got two,
Exactly.
and then fuss at their wife for wanting to buy a new dress.
Something. Yeah. Yeah.
Like
exactly.
a $40 dress and a $400
Yeah.
gun.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
I'm like, well, no, you can't. I mean, you try to control your wife with money, but it ain't.
But
or the thing that drives me crazy, and I'll just say this to you. We're just talking, but we kept going. It shocks me that men would sit down and play video games all night when their wife goes to bed.
That's a whole nother podcast. That's ridiculous.
I'm like, look, and I'll just
number one, grow up.
Hey, I'm not saying you can't play a video game or watch a movie, but
that's a little much. Yeah, that's
and I say this. Look, we're on the subject. I'll go ahead and say it. One of the vices I deal with couples all the time is, and I tell them this just practically, go to bed at the same time.
Exactly.
And I'm not just talking about every night as some physical, but I'm saying you can pray together. You can talk about your day. You can find out from her what she needs from you, what's going on tomorrow with the kids.
It's a wonderful time.
I mean,
everything's calm. You're by yourself. And I know we're going over, but with me and Rachel, one of our greatest times together was when we just went to bed together. Right. We talked, we enjoyed it. It was a good time.
Right.
And I sure don't regret that. That's a wonderful thing.
And I mean, so, you got to get on the same page with those things.
Exactly.
And, I fish a little bit and I golf a little bit.
Sure.
And I went the other day, but I hadn't gone in months, and my wife wanted me to go.
Yeah, right.
And
it was not a bad thing.
No, not a bad thing.
Don't put it over your wife.
But, when she's got, especially those of you got little kids, I didn't understand this. A good friend of mine at Temple, he had more money than I did, and he used to play, and he's pretty good. And I said to him one time, he said, I just don't get to play much right now. I didn't understand that.
Yeah, right. Wow.
My kids were little, and I look back and I understand that now. Then I went through a stage where my kids were little.
Yeah.
And I can't leave my wife to take care of little kids every Saturday so I can go play golf.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I mean, some of you just need to grow up.
That's exactly right.
I'm not real sure how we got on that.
I ain't either, but we got there. We're there. I think the video game started.
Video games, But the thing that you think about is the cherish and the value. Cherish. Yes. There's a great book out. I haven't read it all. I've listened to some information on it. Mm-hmm. Tim, I can't remember his name, wrote the Sacred Marriage book.
Yes.
But he talked about cherish being the idea that we love, but cherish means that one and only that we put above everything else.
Exactly.
And that's really what we're talking about. It's a Bible principle. It's the vow we made.
It is.
It's not guilt.
Right.
Everybody's going to have some guilt.
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
Like I wish I had done this or whatever. Yeah. But you want to live life with as little regrets as possible.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And some of you may be listening to us say, Brother Mark, I messed up my kid's childhood, or I emphasized the wrong things. You don't have to live. You don't beat yourself up there. You take the good things you have in life now.
Start today. Yeah, start today.
Invest.
Yeah.
You can, look, the way God created life is you can only go from here forward.
That's exactly right.
You can learn from yesterday's mistakes.
Sure.
You can love yesterday's memories.
Yeah, exactly.
But still, you can go forward.
So that's all we got. And that's the best thing we have.
That's all we can do.
That's what God
and so that's our challenge to you today. Just value what God's given you and make the most of it.